Well, it's beyond time that we straighten out what Donald Trump's self proclaimed nationalism means and, more importantly, does not mean. After Trump declared himself a nationalist during the midterm election campaign, the elite media unleashed the first front in the war to deride nationalism and protect globalism with a flurry of accusations that the president was employing code language or the hackneyed term dog whistle to signal his racist followers that he really meant white nationalists. And then a second front in the establishment war on nationalism was launched last weekend by French President Emmanuel Macron, who chose a solemn ceremony commemorating the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I to declare that nationalism is a betrayal of patriotism. Here to help us sort out what nationalism is and isn't is LibertyNation.com managing editor and proud Brit, Mark Angelides, who joins us from the UK. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Well, Mark, it's a pleasure. Let's start with the white nationalism thing. This was nothing less than a blood libel. But we've become so accustomed to this kind of attack from the left that it hasn't raised the kind of ruckus it should have. I guess the only thing missing was a direct reference to Hitler when they call Trump a white nationalist. Please describe for us, if you would, what President Trump's nationalism is and isn't.
Okay, Tim. Well, quite simply, to start with what it isn't. Well, it isn't race-based. That's pretty much the first thing and the most important thing to say. What Trump's been doing over the last 2 years, and arguably quite successfully, is trying to raise the living standards of all Americans. Now, that doesn't matter whether they're white Americans, black Americans, any colored Americans at all. It's about raising the living standards of the whole. And the key factor in this is Americans. And that brings us on to what Trump's nationalism is. It's a question of putting, as he says again and again, America first, the interests of American citizens, regardless of race, above the interests of other people.
Now, you and I have discussed this before, and I think we're agreed on the words to describe what Trump's nationalism or his view of American unity is. And it's not multiculturalism, but it's unicultural and multiracial. Explain what you and I mean when we say Trump seeks a unicultural, multiracial society.
Sure. So it's the idea of one culture being dominant over all others. Now, that culture is not a white culture; it's a multiracial culture. It comes basically from the founding of America, where it was people who were not joined by a shared geography or a shared language or a shared religion. Even it was a shared ideal, and that ideal was to live as free people in what were originally the British colonies of America, and then came on to become arguably the greatest nation on earth. And that's the culture. Multiracial means that it's not supposed to be divided into different racial segments. It's everybody under one banner. I mean, I believe somewhere written down in America, I can't think where, there's a e pluribus unum. Let me just check my wallet.
Oh, yes, it's on the actual currency.
Absolutely.
Yes, and well stated, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. I've written about this. You have, in effect, written about this, that what we've lost here really is the sense of a melting pot, which has been sacrificed at the altar of a mosaic of various ethnic and racial identities, all holding on to those identities over an American identity.
Yeah, I mean, even Angela Merkel, the German chancellor, not for much longer though, has admitted on many occasions that multiculturalism has failed because it fails to unify people. It doesn't give people who are newcomers looking to become, in Germany, German citizens and part of the German fabric. It doesn't give them something to become.
As we continue with Mark Angelides, managing editor for LibertyNation.com, joining us from the UK, let's shift our focus to Europe, Mark. What countries in Europe are trending towards full nationalism? Which of the nationalist movements in Europe are the strongest?
Well, the funny thing is, and I'll just preface this, is a lot of people would suggest that nationalism in Europe, especially in Britain, they'd say it's for the old white folk. That's what they're saying.
Right.
This is only in Britain where the majority, at present, the majority who favor a more nationalistic approach. I prefer Nigel Farage's way of looking at it, nationism. I prefer that term myself. But there's semantics, I guess. But across Europe, it's the young. It's all young movement. It's all young people. It's all people who are internet savvy. Now, the countries specifically, clearly we have Italy nominally under Salvini. This the Five Star Movement and La Liga. They're very much an Italy first movement, and they now have commanding power in Italy. Obviously, you've got Hungary with Viktor Orban, who has won his fourth election, the third consecutive one, which is very much a Hungary first, the people of Hungary first, their culture first.
And he's been and Orban has been brutally attacked by the globalists in Europe.
Oh yeah, hugely. I mean, what you have to remember is very few people look back into the past. They only start looking at him when he started attacking the more globalist ideas that were coming through. But this is a guy who's fought for freedom and independence against the communists. So he's been doing this for all of his life. To say that he's a nationalist puppet, which is what they're accusing him of, is ridiculous. In Germany, you have the AfD, who have essentially it's them, the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland, that has pushed Merkel to not run again as chancellor. They've gained seats in pretty much every municipality there. They have over 100 seats in the Bundestag.
German nationalism has risen for the first time since World War II, but of course Germany's particularly sensitive to nationalism because of Hitler and the Nazis. That party was called both nationalist and socialist. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Very welcome. Thank you, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Mark Angelides, managing editor for LibertyNation.com. Up next, Fox News. Is it still alternative media, or has it become just another part of the D.C. elite media?